evening and welcome to this edition of Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90, a time that we review the major events of the week. Today we'll be looking at the Kampala Perenial flooding. Well, this week we lost up to 9 people following the floods that happened in Kampala. We are seeing blame game from the leadership at KCCA, government, everybody saying so-and-so is not doing their job. The Lord Mayor saying the best way to address this challenge is to expand drainage system in Kampala. That's the same language that the KCCA executive leadership is talking about. That's the same language the Minister of Kampala and Metropolitan Affairs is talking about. The issue is the funding. The Lord Mayor Arias Lukwago says the World Bank agreed to provide funding, but the government of Uganda has not provided the counterpart funding. So the World Bank is about to withdraw its funding because the government has not set aside funds that would pay off people who are near the drainage channels so that they can be expanded. So we'll be asking a question: who should we hold accountable for this mess that we continue to see in our city? Remember, there was a report by KCCA that indicated that 70% of wetlands in Kampala have been taken over by tycoons. People have built in these areas where water used to flow into other channels and into Lake Victoria. We know the weatherman, that's the Meteorology Authority, is actually saying more rains are expected throughout next month. How will Kampala deal with this particular challenge? There's an ongoing debate about the Umeme buyout, and it's almost hitting a saga. We know Power Company will be handing over its operation to government on Monday. That's the 31st, according to a concession agreement that they signed 20 years ago. The challenge is now on how much actually Umeme should be paid. Now, Parliament approved 2 figures. The first, it allowed government to borrow over $190 million for purposes of settling Umeme, pending an audit. An audit was done, and yesterday it concluded that Umeme should be paid by 31st of March, $118 million. Now, this report was adopted in Parliament despite questions by the opposition about what will happen to the $72 million, the difference between what they sanctioned for borrowing and what will actually be paid to Umeme, 118. As we are still coming to terms with that, Umeme issued a statement in which they said actually they're supposed to be paid $234 million. Now, the government, through the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, has insisted that they will honor the figure that is inside the audit report that was published yesterday. So are we likely to end in court? Are we likely to end into arbitration? Or will this issue be settled once and for all? But there are also questions about the ability of government to provide service, including electricity, like Umeme has been doing, and also the promise by the government that electricity will be cheaper. Well, the government has assured us that the transition process, they have prepared UEEDCL to do everything that Umeme has been doing. We will be looking at that in detail. The road to the 2026 general elections. Now, as we continue to prepare for these elections, key developments emerged this week. Just yesterday, the NRM party indicated its membership base has grown to 20.7 million people. Now, the party secretariat has, however, clarified that this does not mean that all these are voters, because they have been also registering people who are 16 years old. Now, the opposition is suspicious of this register and says it could be a ploy to rig the next election. The NRM party, we see, has also intensified a plan and a campaign which they have called Buganda Form 7 in the bid to reclaim the parliamentary and lower council seats they lost to the National to the National Unity Platform Party. Public gatherings have been held in Kiboga and some islands. The message is that it was a mistake to vote for the National Unity Platform, and the NRM is determined to address a number of challenges that occasioned this. The NUP says they want to get out there and counter this message, but they are not allowed to do so, which also brings out the debate about the freedom to assemble and also to associate within our political parties. My panel today is of 4 people. Let me introduce the Honorable Stephen Mkitalabirawa, Executive Board Member, National Planning Authority. He is in particular in charge of infrastructure and physical planning. He is a former Bulisa County MP. Good evening, Honorable Mkitale. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, Spectrum Special Radio 1 viewers and listeners, including my panelists. Condolences to all those we lost because we are paying for our sins. It was very tragic, and we are now even praying to God that that rain should not, if it happened for 10 hours, then I don't know. So we should do everything possible this time around. I've said somewhere that nature has audited us, how much we have been able to plan. I remember in environmental management, there is what they call the environmental determinism, that you attack nature at your own risk and you will pay for your sins. So I have seen that was geography year 1 in Makere.
You will expound more when I give you the opportunity to actually say much more about that. Miss Marion Chirabo, lawyer and team lead at Next Gen Women Initiative. She's a member of the National Unity Platform Party. We also remember she served as a student leader at Makere University. Good evening and thank you very much for joining us, Marion.
Good evening, Ken. Good evening, our viewers. Good evening, fellow panelists. I'm so happy to be here. And I also, in the same spirit, extend my condolences to all those who lost their lives in the floods and all those who are sleeping on the streets and sleeping under the cold weather because they have lost their homes. It's really unfortunate. This could have been avoided. But let us continue to fight for a better Uganda where all citizens are able to not experience floods.
All right. Our third panelist, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Senior Economist, Lecturer and Director at Makere University Business School Economic Forum. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Muhumuza.
Good evening, the panelists and everybody out there, viewers and listeners. Me, I will extend my condolences to all, even anywhere in the country, who have lost their loved ones or their lives due to our sins of omission and commission as a public sector.
Our fourth panelist, Dr. James Tweheyo, member of the NRM Central Executive Committee, where he represents workers. He's also the man in charge of the Resident District Commission as well in the Rwenzori sub-region. Good evening, Dr. Tweheyo. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, listeners. Good evening, viewers. Good evening, my colleagues. To me, condolences are not enough. I'm a little worried that this was just a tip of iceberg and we need to do much more to save those who are still alive. According to the weather forecast, there's much more to come. Are we ready to salvage and save those who have not yet drowned?
That's a question that we have to contend with. All right, looking at your opening statements on this particular issue, Honorable Mkitale says we are paying for our sins. Marion says this situation could have been avoided. Dr. Tweheyo, you are worried. Dr. Muhumuza, omissions and commissions. You seem to agree with Honorable Mkitale that partly it is because of a specific problem. Let's kick off the discussion with the issue of Kampala perennial flooding. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Tweheyo. Your quick response. Did you see this coming? Did you at any point think that we could have this kind of situation where we lose up to 9 people because of flooding in the capital city?
I really saw it coming. I'm not an architect, I'm not a physical planner, but I saw it coming. What do you expect when you see KCCA coming with their shovels and hose and removing soil from trenches and putting it on the road and keeping it there for the next 1 month? What do you expect? What do you expect when you see these contractors doing work? They bring soil and dump it there. They don't have even a net to cover it. You know, in these countries where they do the job, you can keep a soil mold for even a year or two, as long as you dump it and you cover it. What do you expect when you see us removing all the other things and putting on the flowers, you know, sometimes even running around with hose, digging around the flowers in the name of beautification? But what do you expect when our planners fold their hands because they are forced by the political powers and political forces? Political, I'm not talking about parties. No. I'm talking about the people in position. When a planner says, don't build here, and the council says we have made our resolution, council, whether it is NUP, whether it is NRM, whether it is DP, who leads that council? What do you expect? What do you expect when people block channels? What do you expect when rubbish is thrown and littered everywhere, and the channels which are supposed to release water are blocked, and nobody is concerned? We have, I think, put our attention to other issues, not to the lives of our people, and we think we are the people who are in the upscale areas who matter, and in my view, it is a far no. Every life matters. And mostly, mostly, the planners are not those who are affected. Very rarely, very, very rarely. Maybe they can be affected for an hour when he comes with the V8 and he is blocked by the channel for a while, the overflow, and even the V8 now navigates through it and goes. I say a firm no. This business must stop, and we're in it all together. It is not an individual issue, and the affected people are here in Kampala majorly. By the way, it is not only Kampala. The other day it was Bududa. How many did we lose there? It was a flood. We have the meteorology which will tell us there is rain coming. We have the planners who will tell us the channel should be going like this. One time, let me tell you this very quickly. One time somebody had bought or claimed to have been bought under the late Sebana Chizito to have bought City Square. You remember that episode? And that person was stopped by NEMA. He even went up as far as the president to say, look here, these people are preventing us from doing development. And when NEMA explained that this person, if he excavated, as he was planning, if he excavated this City Square area, the soil that would come out of that area would be as big as Rubaga Hill. And when they asked him, now, where are you planning to put that soil? He says, no, we can dump it near the lake there. You know?
Move Rubaga Hill to the lake.
To the lake, block it, and then Kampala becomes flooded. Some of these things are done with our eyes wide open. Unfortunately, the affected are not those who have the means and the ability to prevent it. Those who have the means and ability to prevent it, get away with it. I want to say, for a moment, that His Excellency the President acted well when he sacked these people of KCC. And I think there are many other people who deserve a sacking and even a punishment. If you are a planner worth your salt, if you are a driver of a bus and the bus has a fault and you are the driver worth your salt, you'd say, well, I am not driving this bus. Against the loss of my salary, against the loss of my job, I'm ready to lose it, but I'm not ready to lose the 62 people in a bus. You'd have credit if somebody else decided to take it and something happened. But you know,
who exactly are you talking about?
We have a physical planning department in KCCA. If I were in a position, I'd arrest some of them, by the way, including the head of it.
For this particular problem?
Not only for this, but for many other problems. This is the first time the city is, not the first time it is flooding. The other day when they were at Ham's Center there, he had blocked the channel, didn't he? And you're aware of it? Isn't anybody aware of it? What happened? Don't you think much of this water that was at the clock tower could have been caused by such blockages? Don't you think the problem is caused by these upscale roads which are being made and the water is dumped in the soil is dumped in the channels and the soil now moves to block some of those areas? Why can't they act? Why can't they do what they're supposed to do? Have you actually heard them making a statement to that effect? Have they even taken trouble to warn the public? Forget about the meteorology. These are the physical planners, paid, by the way, by government and very highly. That's their duty. What is their work?
Dr. James Tueheyo, yes. Central government took over the management of Kampala. We have the Kampala Capital City Authority Ministry.
Right.
We have KCCA,
yes.
Executive members who are deployed by President Yoweri Museveni.
Yes.
And at the time you were taking over this city, you actually promised us completely something different. Don't you think it will be wrong for you to be pointing fingers to the planners who have just assumed
office? It is not wrong.
And yet you've been in power for the last, is it coming to 40 years? And you've been in the same city looking at this mess.
Have we been in the same city with the same floods? The floods are developing. And should I tell you the reason why?
The reason I use the title, the reason I use Perenial is because yesterday I had the head of planning at KCCA here on this show, and he said, we know every year this is going to happen.
And what has he done to prevent it?
No money. They want money to widen the drainage channels, and the central government is not providing.
Do they also need money to dump in the soil which they are using to work on the roads to block the channels? Isn't that money being wasted, if anything? No, do they need money to remove the soil? Let me give you a quick example. When you go to Akamwesi there, they were working on the other sidelines of the soil. And by the way, they are the ones who give tickets and allow those people to even work. When you look at those people who are making even some bivanjas, ground breaking for the buildings, and they're the ones who are carrying soil, dropping it in there. Haven't you even seen trucks, by the way, carrying soil without any cover? Haven't people been having their eyes bloated with the dust?
So what's the responsibility of the central government when it comes to the management of the city?
The central government in the management of city puts both political and other civil areas. What would be the responsibility of this management if they put you here and made a mess? You, as person who is serving in this particular studio. They would take responsibility, one, but you personally would have a price to pay.
The only mess I would make is if I'm put here in this studio and I'm not given these microphones and I'm expected to do a show.
The microphones are there.
The people at KCC are saying, give us the money to widen the drainage channels.
It is not all about money. They should say, give us the authority to clean up the available channels. Are the small channels available clean? Have they maintained them to ensure that the little water that is there flows or the big amounts of water flow? If they were given the same money or even additional monies, would it do better? The issue is, and I can say without any trace of doubt, the answer is no. These people are irresponsible. They are very responsible for the death of the lives for the loss of the lives of these 9 people. They should be even held more accountable than ever before, so that sometimes, you see, I want to make it clear. When we are in positions of this nature, the world should know, and we ourselves should know, that it is not only dangerous, but it should be impossible for us to survive when a mess happens which we should have prevented. We should not allow this to continue. I say a firm no.
And my addition, when I said generalizing, we're not just talking about floods. Even as we are talking now, somebody is either in hospital dying because of similar things, that the blood is supposed to be going in that person, might even be in the hospital. But there's no tube to get it from the bottle into that person, or cannula to connect. I mean, all these kinds of things, as I said, our sins of omission and commission are everywhere. Why are we discussing 9? If you get into maternal mortality figures, how many mothers are dying every day out of preventable cases? So let's discuss a bigger question.
Yes.
But also, as we are saying, even if you find the money, and to give benefit of doubt to the KCC officials, we know who has occupied these wetlands. Even if you're a KCC director or whatever, you cannot remove these fellows. Now, I saw supplementary going to ISO. Maybe, I don't know whether ISO will evict the wet people in the wetlands.
NEMA has been doing some work.
The supplementary and the budget went to ISO to remove people from wetlands. I was also wondering why it didn't go to NEMA. Then NEMA can decide which security agency is best to help them. Maybe they have realized them and police are unable. Let's now lift it to ISO level. I mean, some things really require to be discussed in the morning.
So it's your argument that for us to be able to deal with this flood sustainably, we need to evict people from the wetlands. Is that what you're saying?
To protect the wetland, those who are in, and usually we don't say evict in public sector economics and language. Relocate.
Relocate.
Yes. These are citizens.
That will mean we have to incur an extra cost.
You know the things we are talking about, PAPs in the projects, project affected persons, they are paid money and relocated. If they came in by government mistake, you don't want now to say, but you are not supposed to have been here in the first place. Some of them even got titles. Meaning the public sector was there, but something was not working. So don't blame this particular citizen, relocate. But now, where do you take them? And are you going to take them and just dump? Because you have left here, you go and forget. You remember the people from Bududa, whom we took to Kiriandongo, your home area? They went back because we did not meet our part of the bargain to what you call resettlement. You must put me in a similar condition or better conditions. Don't just put me on a truck, put me there and give me 1 bag of rice, half a bag of beans, and you think you are done. Even if I was to plow my own garden, it's going to take me 3 months. What will I be eating the next month? There are also other things that are not just gardens.
All right.
Relatives. You left your graves there, your sister is now gone. Who would be helping you while you are out from your children is settled elsewhere? That is social disruption. We don't work it out decently.
All right. Spectrum Xtra on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going to go for a break. When we return, we'll hear from Honorable Stephen Kitale-Rawa, but also be hearing from Marion, who is also here with us in studio, as we reflect on the Kampala perennial flooding. A big challenge this week. We lost 9 people. What can we do as a people to address these issues. Spectrum Extra, keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing the major events of the week. We are looking at the Kampala perennial flooding situation. This week, we lost up to 9 people due to the floods that occurred. We are trying to look for a sustainable way to actually deal with these issues. The panel today, we have the Honorable Stephen Mkitale-Virawa, we have Dr. James Tuheyo, we have Dr. Muhumuza Fred, and also we have Marion, who is joining us on this panel. Let me come to you, Honorable Stephen Mkitale-Virawa. You come from the National Planning Authority, and you are in particular in charge of planning, but also infrastructure. When you look at the mess that is in Kampala, and we also hear of quarrels over who should take the lead in issues of planning, etc. We seem to be in a sort of confusion. What is your take? What advice would you give, Honorable Mkitale?
You know, I was trying to look for some elementary. I can even start from indigenous knowledge. My grandfather was the chief of King Satowin. His only level of education was baptism. But we had Burungi once. In the north, they call it Teach Parak. In Congo, where I used to be during the conflict time, they call it Salongalinga Musala.
That is so.
Now, how did we lose that?
I thought he was about to say Bolingo.
Yes, because my grandfather, during his days, he said, from your land boundary, you live 4 yards, and your neighbor 4 yards. 8 yards is an access. I started earlier when I was registering apology and condolences to those who have suffered. Of course, we can't quantify the economic loss in terms of man hours, time, and what was destroyed. It is humongous. I was saying that before every course unit was made a full course for 3 years at the university. Introductory geography year 1, which included the cartography and the physical planning, they first taught you about environmental determinism. That whereas God gives us land to domineer, we should also use it carefully. If you don't, you do it at your own risk, it will turn against you. The multipurpose land use planning is all at the end supposed to benefit man. But God in wisdom said, the lakes are there for you to enjoy the fish and also have, the wetlands are there. You know, wetlands are supposed to filter. This water which is killing people. In 1983, when I came to Kampala, I would stand at Mutungo water tank and go to my brother's place at Utabika Hospital when he was working. And see Vukasa green palm trees up to Namiriango College. So the population is increasing, and we know. We just had the census. And we know the Vision 2040 already envisaged some of these challenges. And that's why even another city was being proposed in Nakasongola. We have gone ahead to create more cities. How come we even have now parish chiefs who are graduates, but they cannot compare with my grandfather who only got baptism level of education to enforce protecting the mivule trees, planting them where do you put a pit latrine, where do you put indigenous knowledge. In 2010, by design intentional, the whole country was declared a planning area. We repealed the Country Planning Act. That's the very time the KCCA law was made. That's the very time some of us were demanding that the GKMA also, we should have other cities law. We have since created more cities. But we should not just discuss Kampala. This crisis can even come to the new cities. Actually, I wish now we even take fiscal planning to be among the 7 pillars of PDM. So that since the whole country is a planning area, we should take it up to the parish, what my grandfather used to do. If we did that, then we will understand that we should not have gone to the wetlands. The Constitution is very clear. Lake shores, hilltops, riverbanks, and wetlands are no-go area. It's constitutional. But somebody is issuing titles in those very areas. And because the title is issued, another one, an urban authority, is also approving plans. Now, whoever is even saying we just open drainages, I think he has lost his history. He's just being political. If I go back to the Kampala, the greater Kampala, we have a natural system. You know, for me, as a native hydrologist, I don't use the word flooding. I say encroachers. By nature, a lake system recharges. I am born on the lake, and I've done fishing and strayed on all these lakes around this region. So the lake system naturally recharges. Recently, on Lake Albert, we have lost more than 2.5 kilometers. My grandfather saw it when my father was young. It has happened again. So God can decide any time to recharge. And when it recharges, that's when you get the togo, the marshes, you enjoy the malay, the mambas, some tilapias in the grasses. God is still good for you. So we are just failing to do what you call multi-purpose land use planning, which now, interchangeably, you can say land use planning, and we are now using the word National Physical Development Plan. Yes, we delayed to put in place a National Physical Development Plan. We required it 20 years ago. It was only approved recently in cabinet. But when we even made this country, the whole country planning area, if you trace in terms of implementation, the performance is very decimal. Now, in 2020, a board was created to approve this planning function. So this planning function cannot only be done by one entity. I am starting from a parish. I am saying the landlord. I am saying at a community. Because we are planning not only the Kampala city and the GKMA. They are municipalities, but municipalities grow into cities. And that's what we are talking of the conurbation. When Kampala city connects with Mukono, connects with Impig, that's when we talk about the metropolitan conurbation. So we are saying, we are talking of municipalities, town councils, urban authorities, the national plans. Albertine is a special planning area. We are now talking of Karamoja. And this function, the current status, the law was taking it. Rationalization was now taking this function, the overarching action, to be at national planning, but working with the Ministry of Lands, working with the Ministry of Local Government, which is actually the host of all this planning area. So for me, I think we are just discussing what has happened in one reign and missing the bigger picture. In 2020, again, the very year we made this National Physical Planning Board, some people call it from my Muzukulu Musumba. Katumba Wamala did present a very good road act. Again, in the old department of a huge geography in Makerere, in fiscal planning, they told you the linear planning starts with a road. So the Katumba Wamala Road Act departs from the old Road Act of 30 meters road reserve. Because corridors should be integrated, whether it is for the drainage, because when you make a road, the road is also leading to drainage. It should have sewage, the electricity, the ICT these days, the
service ducts,
the telecom and the service ducts. So we have a good law right now. But if we are doing planning, and I'm emphasizing planning, we knew when we were doing 2010, I was with Mumuza when they were singing the song of Vision 2040 and NDP 1. We should have gazetted corridors. And that corridor includes the what? This drainage of water. Because God has never made accidents. A lot of this Kampala has this water system. If you understand the Lubiji system, the Nakivu channel, the Chinawataka channel, these would be no-go areas. But interestingly, you would find in 2010-11, when we were doing the Kampala water sun, we knew these areas are required. As I've told you, these swamps are very useful for our water quality. Do you know why we are in Katosi? National water is in Katosi and not in Gaba. Gaba 1, 2, 3, you know. I started working for those projects in my work of procurement with Joseph Ripo Akziatengli, 92. I know all these systems, even when we go to electricity, the same thing. But the place is polluted. So we ran it to Katosi, again paying for our sins. Because at the end of the day, these marshes and the yams you see, they filter all the other bad pollutants, which are, by the time the water goes to Gaba, where the Bunyoro people of Lake Albert sent the Nile patch to grow there by Commissioner Stoneman in 1954-58, again the times of our parents. The Nile patch is finding quality water, but we are even poisoning them. This water goes with everything, including these industries which are also not regulated. Because we should be having multi-purpose land planning is about where do you want residentials, where do you want high-rise houses?
So, Honorable Mkitali,
Like
in a nutshell,
where do you want low income and where do you want industrial parks? Where do you the population is growing? We must continue eating. Are we consolidating and banking land for feeding? You know, it's a very big complex question. My disappointment, even with my 15 years in Parliament, this area is given a decimal budget function. Periphery. The whole land sector should have been funded in the last 3 NDPs. The way we fund the energy, the energy you're going to discuss, and the way we finance.
So in a nutshell, very quickly,
we have not funded it properly. Because a lot of the corridors, for example, we made a bad law which says land belongs to the people. And for you to plan to gazette this corridor, I remember this base one time when Muzee Second was the speaker. Prompt, prior, and adequate compensation. So even the gazetting has been
mismanaged,
has been blocked. In effect, it's not possible.
All right.
And when you admire some of these countries like Tanzania and Ethiopia, the land belongs to the state. But I have also done a lot of work in Rwanda at genocide.
As you wind up,
the Kiovus were not very far from Hotel Mercolina and some of those good hotels and some diplomatic areas. There was slums, not very far from Majerwa, but they have cleaned them intentionally. They have planted very good trees. For us who went there immediately after the war, you have to go back and, was this the place I used to know? So if these people we produced here and exported to Rwanda, I'm sorry for no bad intentions, student of diplomacy, but they have been able to regulate. They have been able to put order. Even when they evicted the people from those slums I'm talking about, they have given them low cost housing somewhere. Even the diaspora is now investing that kind of. But for us, you go and ask, how did the Kasokoso come about?
All right.
The guys who were in Nakawa Estate and Naguru, they started the Kasokoso.
All right.
And what is happening there? That Bukasa area was also part of the area to be protected. Even the investor national housing, which should have given us,
they gave it to the
we
church
lost it.
Right.
So I think let's first concede of our sins. If we do that, and because I said biblical, we confess to God and say we have made our sins, and it's now time to correct them, and we agree with some anger, annoyed the way Honorable was saying here, workers. He was saying my SEC member. Then we revisit this with some amnesty. But it is even possible to announce tomorrow and say, whoever has put a wall on what was a road, because it is these roads which should take the
water. All right. Honorable Mkitali, hold it there. Let's hear from Marion. Marion, your quick take on this situation that we have found ourselves in, losing 9 people, the debate going on, blame game here and there. We seem to be caught up. We don't know exactly what to do. What's your take?
Well, I think I am going to agree with Honorable because I felt like we were dilly-dallying around. We all want to take blame and want to take it as a collective, but I would also want to add on what he said, that we must agree that the government under which we are has failed to regulate. We have plans on paper. We're going to make better. We're going to make even better and better laws. We're going to make better planning, but all that doesn't matter if a minister who is supposed to ideally be representing government's interest and fighting to make sure that these government plans and policies is the same person building in a what? In a wetland. So now, if you, the minister, is building in the wetland, me who has no shelter and sleeps on the street, what audacity do you have to tell me that I should not build in the wetland? I've been saying this thing of Simani, we evict people. But you see the constant thing that has come up, you're only evicting the poor. We can mention to you thousands and thousands of rich people who are building in wetlands with their kalinas. And no one is coming to their doorstep and telling them to leave. If you go around the shores of Lake Victoria, very big buildings and hotels and you know, storied houses, those are not poor people who are living there. Those are very rich people who have very power and influence in our politics, but they are untouchable. Let a Umeme guy come there and you'll see how they start caning them. I remember an incident whereby sorry, I name a person. I remember an incident whereby these people are so shameless that they can even beat you. I remember a story of a Umeme guy who came to disconnect a certain honorable of parliament who is now apparently the deputy speaker, and they started beating him up. Now if Nema people now come to start evicting these people, where will they be? So I think we can't run away from the responsibility that government has. It has failed to rein in its people, but also members of government are also perpetrators of this. Until they put their house in order, this will continue. But for me, it's not even just the flooding. It's a bigger issue, because the issue of pollution and it's interconnected pollution, drainage, and rubbish disposal. We saw with the people of Chitezi. People, I mean, it can't be that in this 21st century, after 6 years of independence, with all this technology and knowledge that we have at our fingertips, that people are dying under a pile of rubbish. So it's not even a floods issue or Mother Nature coming to claim. We have a problem as government in making sure that there is proper disposal, first of all, of rubbish, of protection of the environment. And now we are starting to see that some of this rubbish is now being dumped at the shores of Lake Victoria. So imagine that kind of pollution that is taking place right there. So I don't think we should absorb any accountability from government. It is solely at their foot. They have failed in their regulation. They have failed in their responsibility.
Your political party NUP has been promising us a new Uganda. How would it handle the city in case it was given an opportunity? What are some of the changes we would see? What would you do?
For me, I think the first thing is implementing the laws that we have. If we are saying that no one should build in wetlands, indeed, let us practice what we preach and make sure we kick people off the wetlands. But then secondly, we were talking about the issue of poor low funding for some of these initiatives, KCC complaining. Fund KCCA, let it do its work. We're talking about drainage, them not being able to do the drainage. But I mean, recently we saw cleaners striking over 3,000 shillings, 3,000, 4,000. And government and KCCA had failed to pay them 4,000 just to keep the city clean, just to keep rubbish out of those drainage systems. Because even with the reclaiming of the land, the drainages that we have cannot take out water properly because they are just infested with rubbish. They're all blocked. So even the ones that you have are not working to the capacity they're supposed to be working because of the simple thing of cleaning them, that a sweeper has to come and beg you for 4,000 shillings. I think it's quite shaming. So the thing is, let us have our priorities straight. As NUP, our priorities are quite straight. That if the city needs to be kept clean, let us fund that. Let us, if we have public hospitals and they need gloves, let us make sure those basics are there. But instead, we're there, money gets lost, we can't account for some money, we're spending unclassified budgets, but eventually they go and find someone's car, someone's clothes. A speaker has a budget of clothes of over, I don't know, billions and billions of money. Like, we can no longer turn a blind eye to these things and afford to just walk on eggshells.
All right. Dr. Fred Muhumuza, I didn't give you an open chance to contribute. You took up some space that at the time that Dr. James Toheyo was contributing, but we want to hear from you substantively. You've been in the city for quite some time, looking at the challenges that it has faced. I'm told somehow, there was a plan actually to build a new city for our country, but perhaps could it be the time maybe we look into that direction? Do we need a new city? Is Kampala becoming so thin and we cannot survive with the floods? Should we be moving out? What should we be doing as a sustainable way of dealing with it?
I wouldn't call it a city, but what brings people in Kampala? You want to possibly decongest Kampala, because now everybody comes in here and everything, I must put a building, I must do whatever in Kampala. Can we find some other things? South Africa has a decentralized system. You will find the court seat elsewhere and these other seats elsewhere. Find what are the things bringing people to Kampala.
And I thought that was the idea around the Kampala metropolitan area, where you bring PG, Wakiso, and Mukono together.
So you may want to say, what do we weave around areas on some of these things that have already evolved out there? You have a university in Gulu. Can we make sure there's so much activity in Gulu? There is an equivalent of Kirudu, and you decentralize the referral system so that some of these people go out there. If they need medical treatment, if people need business, people need. Why do we have to do all the grinding of maize in Kisenyi? This maize comes all the way from Kamwenge, from Kiriandongo, and you want to need to Kampala to grind it and then take it back to Sudan or to Kenya. So you need a bigger planning to say, how do I first of all stop new people coming in here and then keep other people out there? Maybe even when you do that, you'll even save people who have to really hustle through the water. Because this water, anybody is daring it because they have a need to be on the other side. But if they had an alternative, they would have said, well, Kampala is flooded, I'm not going. But there are some people without any option and they must go through. But let's get back to the realities. Water is what in planning we say is a non-intelligent enemy. Water doesn't know we exist. It does not come to kill us. It is just doing the rules of gravity, flow from a high end to a low end, continue and settle somewhere.
There's a saying that water will always flow where it did pass in the past.
Exactly. So it's not your enemy. You know it passes there. Like River Nile hasn't.
And you block it.
River Nile hasn't changed. Now you want to go and build in the middle of River Nile and then come crying that the water has killed me. You know it will always follow the Nakivubo channel. Why did we get into it? And I'm even saying, when you say let's open up and broaden the drainage, where are you going to dump the water? Eventually you must have like Kabaka's Lake, that when I make it from Rubaga and from Mdeba, I have where to put it. Because not all this water is going to go to Lake Victoria.
The other day we saw even Lake Victoria going back into Entebbe, so some areas.
Exactly. I even saw here
water rising.
When you are going to Bugorobi, there is a place which used to smell. I think there were sewage plants there, sewage treatment plants.
One cocos, some place.
Just around where the railway is. And that was really a wetland. Water would gather there, and Ministry of Water was, and National Water Sewerage were treating sewage.
Lagoons.
Now, I went there and found buildings. But even in Rubiji, I found buildings in the middle of what used to be a river.
And you saw the cars flooding
now,
in that.
The rainwater system over Kampala hasn't changed. It is still going to be generating as much water as it did in the 1940s and 60s. But you have now blocked where it should be going, and you're going to have that problem. But there's another bigger problem. Paving. All the water that was supposed to be upheld in Nakasero in open spaces, every compound is paved, so whatever falls on the surface runoff has increased. Can we begin to have like people in the Kampala and other terraces hold some of this water in some of these places? But if you pave the entire Nakasero and Koloro, do you know how much water you have created that is going to end up somewhere down in the golf course and eventually goes down to Electoral Commission
and
where
the
they were and continue this way. So the planning is really not just a drainage here, also design a way of how do I hold and catch this water. It's a bigger conversation, but I think I'm not going to blame an officer here and an officer there. The whole system needs to be rethought.
All right. Dr. James Toheyo, just tying up the loose ends on some of the things that have been spoken about this issue.
We all have played a part in causing this problem. Do you realize how we dispose our garbage? We just imagine trucks will come and pick and throw away. But even the richest have failed even sort out the rubbish. do you realize, even for us, many of you who attend good functions, that after taking water, every other person throws a bottle there? If you went to any function, whether it is political or what, you'll find the nonsense. Water, rubbish bottles, the veras everywhere else. So who is throwing them there? When you're in Kororo, who throws those bottles down? When you are in whichever area, it is we who are able to access that place. So all of us have played a part. And all of us must now get back the drawing board and play a part. We shouldn't simply say, by the way, this water that is flowing is going to even come more. Because as he said, once we increase the surface collection of the water, not only the water flow, but the more houses we build, the more water we get, that will come with more force. If water is retained on a roof, it goes faster in a runoff. You can even see it, even if it is put in the channel what? It goes faster than the water that falls in a matter of rain. So we must be able to look at that and think of the future, not of today. Much more water is coming, I can tell you.
Right.
As you continue to build, the water, the runoff surface and the force with which it will come will be even much bigger because of that. And my brother Mukitari was talking about his father and the land ones. We should differentiate between wisdom and knowledge. Yes, we should differentiate between those. King Solomon was wise. Many of us have knowledge. We have learned book knowledge, we know everything, but we don't use this knowledge to solve the problems that will affect us.
They call it indigenous.
So I think we need to call both the knowledge and the wisdom to understand that things can be wrong and can affect all of us.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners. We begin with this from Awuzu Wilson, who says, Dr. Tweheo is right. KCCA contractors excavated drains and heaped maram and soil on those sites for ages, and they are not bothered. No one seems to be supervising them and telling them to hurry. Contractors work at their own pace and unbothered. Flooding can happen anywhere. In 2023, Dubai flooded due to heavy rains. Kampala has been flooding since 1902, with the African market at current day Queensway before they were relocated to Nakasero. Similar in 1912, Nakibo flooded when the colonial government was constructing the War Memorial Stadium. Look at the Dutch who live below sea level. The engineers we have are not better trained to work on drains. The political narrative has to change. Those who settle on the higher grounds equally distort water retention of the soil. Then we have another comment from Okelo Patrick Bonyo in Busega. It seems no one knows what is wrong and what is right. Lord Mayor and his team blame the central government and KCC executive directors. Technocrats will blame the politicians. Then the politicians will say it's everyone. Kampala, being a hilly and valley with swamps, requires a proper drainage planning that can contain huge volume of water coming from the top hill. Some houses have to pave way for drainage. Umeme buyout will be coming to that. But now let's take a break. But when we return, I'll read more comments because there are so many here. And then we'll have a round of responses from the panelists. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum Xtra will continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Xtra, live on Radio 1 FM 90. The panel is reviewing the major events of the week. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. The panel, Honorable Stephen Muktalebirawa, Executive Board Member at the National Planning Authority, in charge of infrastructure and physical planning. Ms. Marion Chirabo, the lawyer and team lead at Next Generation Women Initiative, member of the National Unity Platform Party. Dr. Fred Muhumza, Senior Economist, Lecturer and Director, Makerere University Business School Economic Forum. Dr. James Tweheo, member of the NRM Central Executive Committee, where he represents workers. We have had a number of comments coming in on this particular subtopic we've been discussing, the floods in Kampala, so I'll continue reading some of them. Benon Fred Twinamasko, this March we have both lunar and solar eclipse, meaning that the moon will be nearer and the rains will be more. But in 2007, December, there was an El Nino, but because late Haji Sebagala as a mayor had the campaign to desilt the drainage, no flooding happened. The problem is mainly about the drainage opening, which should have been done during the time we were complaining about the hot weather. Road construction should take advantage of the hot season. He says, happy weekend to everyone. Amo Martin, listen again from Mbale. Disasters like Kitezi landfill and the recent floods risks of uncertainties. Uncertainty which is easier to plan for. Uganda is just lucky. Let us wait for the day the downpour will last for 24 hours and not the usual 6 hours. Then we have another comment here. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. A fish starts rotting from the top. That is an African proverb. And the comment comes in from Benjamin. I don't know if there's any fish somebody has seen that has begun rotting from the top. I don't know. Maybe one of you will help us to understand this. Let's begin with the responses. Dr. Fred
The
Muhumza.
floods might have taken away the fish before it rot.
No, they were catching fish from people's homes,
Mm.
which was pushed by the
Some people who had actually
Carrying
people who had fish
tilapia.
ponds
All right.
lost much of the fish.
Yes, it has gone.
Any particular issue you want to respond to?
Some overflew,
I wanted
and the fish was running out,
Mm.
and there was terrible loss.
All right. Honorable Mkitali.
First of all, as I said, the whole country is a planning area. So let us plan this country, point number one. But when you plan, you also enforce.
Yeah.
So we are planning a village, a parish, a sub-county, a town council, a municipality, a region. Alberton is a special planning area, but the plan enforcement is not taking place. There is no budget for it. So let us plan, enforce, give the right funding, but also have coordination. Because we are planning, everything we are planning is under some urban authority, some local government, some district. But this function is going to be done together with the Ministry of Lands. Now, for us, our mandate by Constitution and by the law, as amended, is to provide as National Planning Authority an overarching function with command and control and as a regulator. If we agree it is our responsibility, I think even every LOC1 chairperson, a parish chairperson, a mayor, would have actually said, if we are really serious that Kampala flooding annoyed us in Great Kampala, Saturday everybody would have picked a shovel to go and open the drainage. But you will not hear that. We are blaming, the negativity is too much, we are blaming everybody. I have not heard a single mayor, a single MP, a single minister who is saying that for me this weekend, I have my gumboots, I have my spade and my wheelbarrow, because this is the Bulungi ones, the indigenous knowledge I'm talking about.
Do you
And
think-
it can be done. And if we pick this garbage, this is how we understand it. It becomes a culture, it becomes a discipline.
All right.
So let us not only blame the mayor, the minister, I don't know, Minister of Land. We are all responsible.
Marion, you wanted to jump
Well,
in.
Honorable, I would like to inform the panelists that actually NUP, especially the youth in the party, have taken it upon themselves to have clean your community campaigns around. Perhaps the unfortunate thing is that we do not publicize them as much, but at least for...
If you have been doing that, then we wouldn't be having this rubbish in the drainage around.
But you see, we are limited also.
And
So it is just a matter of 10 people coming together and saying, let us clean
Only
this
10
small.
people.
Yes, few numbers, because you have to start somewhere.
Honorable
And
Mkitali,
the
the-
point I was making
the-
before I go to the decongesting
you know,
Kampala,
Honorable Mkitali,
I was making the point of a bipartisan, a common good. You know,
Yeah.
This is not a partisan matter.
all right.
Everybody should be interested
Honorable Mkitali,
in hygiene.
you are
Let's
also-
go to-
you are also
you remember health officers?
You are also a stakeholder here in Kampala.
Yes,
Are you
yes.
likely to lead that campaign with your gumboots and your overall to clean up the city?
Can I, very much so.
We are willing
And
to
when
also follow.
you got
Be
any of my
part.
property,
when should we start that
do
campaign?
you know, during COVID,
Mm.
I was battling somebody who wanted to close an access road leading to a Nakivuvu channel in Ntinda, in Chinawataka. You know, and somebody is hiding in the church as a Mkuviriza, but he's blocking drainage. Even when we had the Kiddy Pusiri project, he could not allow the whole project to be executed. So there is some madness, which we must always. But the other point I wanted to make is the point of the whole country being a planning area and where the population is increasing. When we become 100 million population by 2045, I think, these problems are going to double. So we must be intentional to even go vertical condominiums. Not every land is for somebody to throw some piece of something there. We must be intentional to put people in organized areas. And that's why we are saying, when some of us moved the regional tire motion to will operationalize Article 178 of the Constitution. Uganda is not Kampala. Makerere University was a college started by 515. Bunyoro only started the university foundation last week. These universities must be everywhere, and therefore the hostels everywhere, the referral hospitals in every region, the UNRWA in every region. That is one way of making sure that we don't cause this confusion we have caused, and it has been deliberate. At one time when we had some, I don't want to go into details of the Kayunga incident. I said we are responsible for the Kampala confusion. It's not even the Kabaka. Because Uganda is very receptive. But we have brought our problems here. You want to live in a 1 billion house in Kampala, you don't even have a tractor in your village, you don't even have that could give jobs in your village if you took a cotton industry. So we just want to come here, forget where we are born. It's also part of a... So for me, I'm an advocate of regional cities, not for political voting, but as economic zones, the densities which Dr. Mumza is talking about. Because when you create those regional cities and you facilitate them with what brings people to Kampala, good life, electricity, water, and they are not using septic tanks. This time we think, Uganda forgot that it's supposed to be a sewerage system. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry has his own septic tank. And if this flood, if it happens for 3 days, it means the whole city is polluted, because all the septic tank will do what? Will break loose. So it's a very big challenge, but I'm saying it is doable. And that's why it took time to say what is in the Constitution, what is in the Road Act, what is in the Fiscal Planning Act, and now that we are talking of the GKMA and the other cities. By the way, even the GKMA does not have a law. I hope the law is coming, because we have had challenges when we are trying to execute projects beyond the Kampala area. And then Wakiso says, wait a minute. And even by the way, if we want to fix the transport system, it starts from fiscal planning. This wide road reserve I'm talking about of General Katumba Wamala's law is the one which can provide for some mini metro, some rapid bus movement. There is no investor who's going to come to Uganda as long as you don't give them some 2 lanes. And Tanzania has achieved it just the last 5 years. They had a bad jam of more than 5 hours, but now you can run through in 30 minutes in Dar es Salaam. So these things are doable. Uganda, and I don't want to say that you just run to Nakasongola because Kampala has become a mess. No. Can we fix all the other cities and municipalities before they become as bad as Kampala?
All right.
The advantage of cities like Mbale, Entebbe, I can mention Jinja, they had some structural plan. But until recently, when we formed cities and we got some funding for UCMID, these municipalities didn't even have a plan. I have said the plan is important, but not sufficient. You have to enforce, you have to find the money to, and even when these corridors are done, you have to make all this. You saw this week in the New Vision, I think how many express highways are going to be done. So all those, and you take them in a wetland. That wetland, God created it for filtration.
But
It's a reservoir.
All
right. We need actually to move on. Time is not on our side. Let's move on now and look at the Umeme buyout issues. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. There's an ongoing discussion about the exit of Umeme. We've seen figures running here and there about how much Umeme should be paid. I'm quite sure you have some little insights or even much more on this particular situation about Umeme. Can you tell us exactly what is going on, and where does this leave us as a country as we prepare for the exit of Umeme during this time?
Well, thank you. There are things you call an evolving situation, and from the academia you want it to first settle. I'm seeing letters and hearing statements. These are on X, these are official, these are all sorts of things are evolving. To begin with, you wouldn't have expected us to be in this situation, because you would have said there was a concession, there was an agreement, what was in that agreement? And we knew information for Memen not renewing the concession has been with us for the last 7 years or even more. So how did we plan the transition? Auditor General is auditing. We know in the corporate world there is always an audit report as of. So we should have had an audit report, either reflecting in the books of UEDCL, where they are saying UEDCL is the owner of the assets, or
The previous 2 years.
Yeah, or Umeme as a company. Usually audit, you're supposed to do it every year. So we should have said this was the status of Umeme as of 31st December 2024. So that now the debate is only on the 2 months or the 3 months. The same would be reflecting on the side of UEDCR. But we've also been told that whatever Umeme was doing, ERA was involved and
Was the
supervising
regulator.
and regulator and also establishing the assets and the rest of the things that were established. So where is the report of ERA? Where is the...
I saw the executive director of ERA actually accompanying the Auditor General in the Speaker's office to hand over the report, meaning they do agree with what is in the Auditor General's report.
Yeah, but then why did Auditor General have to come in at this point? Because that's what I'm saying. Umeme has been investing for 20 years. You would be expecting this item had a lifespan of 5 years, deplete it, depreciate it to zero. This one has come. So we would really be dealing with the last few sets of investments. And now you can see that the variation is big. And some of these things, it depends on which method you used to audit. And Umeme can really go and challenge the method Auditor General has used, because auditing is not straightforward like mathematics. We are all going to end up on the same answer.
Can you explain a bit for the listener to understand why is there an audit? What exactly is going on?
The audit really is, and why are we even compensating Umeme? Some people have said
that's a question there. Some people think Umeme has been making profits and therefore we shouldn't be compensating them.
The whole agreement says you are making investments. Some of them are going to outlive your existence. Umeme puts a transformer last year somewhere. And this transformer's lifespan is 6 years. So they have only used it for 2 years. Now, either they remove it and take it, but take it to where? So the agreement was leave those things there. But we shall compensate you for the investments you have done, whose revenues you have not realized because the concession has ended. The whole idea was to allow them to continue investing up to the last minute. But now I'm also told, government told them not to do certain investments in the last 2 or 3 years in order to avoid a big compensation. And that's why we now have to look for money to give to you this year, because it is finding some pending investment that Umeme should have made. But all this is speaking to our, I think, way of planning. I could have said investments in the energy sector need to be continuous. So can we say if you tell Umeme not to invest anymore, then you begin the UEDCR investments, and so that they invest parallel, because now you don't want Umeme is leaving and they are dilapidated infrastructure system, because part of the technical losses are because of the nature and structure of the distribution network. So as we speak, it is possible that the technical losses which Umeme had brought down from 38 to about, I think, 16% are rising. And now UEDCR is going to inherit that system. So there are many things that we didn't think manage well. As we always say, this is like running really. What you deliver is the stick. So the transition of handing over the stick, and we've all watched really people run. Sometimes the person who runs faster will do more than his 400 meters to manage that transition. Now, but if you know the other guy runs slower, he will come and pick the stick from you. But the thing you must not drop. And remember, in school we spent time learning how do you hand over the baton. Now, how could
without reducing momentum?
Without reducing momentum, speed, and without dropping it. How could we miss this? Because we knew UEDCR and Umeme transition was literally going to be and needed to be seamless.
All right. Now, we have a situation, the biggest concern of Ugandans, of course, we do not want to lose a lot of money as taxpayers, but we also want a quality of service even when Umeme leaves. Now, Umeme says it must be paid $234 million. The government of Uganda is saying they are going to pay $118 million. Parliament passed a loan request of $190 million. Dr. Fred Mumuza, from your experience, what are we going to pay?
If we were to follow, because Parliament also said, why are we approving it before the Auditor General concludes? And I think it is on the hand side. They said, because this is what we have from the previous provisional audit, the 190. However, we will borrow and pay exactly what comes out of the Auditor General's report. So I would imagine the borrowing request from Umeme, from Stanbic, should be reduced to what has come out in the audit. But that's the on the hand side. That's what Parliament promised.
Oh, there was an attempt to actually raise that issue in Parliament yesterday.
Yes.
But the Speaker said we are bad on time. And
yeah, we are bad on time, but on a small amount. If it's on a small amount, then...
We have an outstanding balance of $72 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It is simply to go to Stanbic and say, I thought I would borrow 190, but now I need to borrow less. That you can easily do. I don't know whether there will be penalties. But I think the bigger part is not now on the 190 and 108, because if we borrow 190 and we need to spend less, we can always find what to do with the other one. There are certain needs, and you can go back to Parliament to allow you supplementary to move it to another area, but the money will be in the kitty. The whole challenge will come on if Umeme comes and says, I'm not taking your 108. Now, of course, government will say your concession ended, the assets revert to me. But now there are certain other complications that may come in there. You may get into a protracted legal war, but you might also reacquire the physical assets. But remember, these assets are now on an IT-based platform. Who owns the Umeme app? That app that we are all using, the Yaka app. What if they say, no, I'm not handing over the app? Then you will have your distribution network to where your here will be switched off, because remember, we remove the other meters. So you have to go around all the 2.5 million or 2.2 million households, especially those which are on Yaka, to give them a direct connect. And how do you charge? You want to avoid all that. Make this smooth. I know even babies, after staying in the womb for 9 months, they may come out violent, but they give warning and say, Mommy, labor pains, 1 hour, 2 hours, you have room to sort out. That smooth transition. Who are we, and how did we fail really to manage something that we knew was coming? For me, these are the questions I want to ask, even before I get to which man and which, because this is where it's going to end up. The president is also on record as having said people went to Washington and inflated certain things when this bad contract, he calls it a bad contract, and many people believe
he did.
It wasn't good. Who are those
At that time when Parliament had recommended that the concession be terminated.
So we began on a wrong note. We are ending on a wrong note. It is very sad, but we seem to know the people who put us where we are.
Right.
Those who went to Washington, I can even check on the flight records and find where they were.
All right. Let's hear from Honorable Mukitale. Honorable Mukitale, your take on this Umeme issue. I know this is a very interesting area for you, but the question is, the government is taking over the infrastructure and therefore management and distribution of electricity in our country. Have we addressed the first reasons why UEB was disbanded? Because there has always been that argument that government cannot manage this kind of interventions.
I don't have to declare a conflict, but at one time when I was doing a lot of energy projects in private sector, in procurement, most of these...
You've done so many things, Honorable Mkitali.
The people were calling me an engineer. So I I'm not an engineer, but I was relating with the projects. So I'm just making a disclaimer. From the days of the Nzavanitas, the Rwomboras, and all these people. For 10 years.
I hope you were not part of the team that went to
for
Washington.
Me, number one, we are talking, do we know how to manage agreements? Because we are talking of a 20-year agreement, and I was a member of Natural Resources, having come from private sector where I had done work with the old UEB. So me, I was against the balkanization, creating these many cost centers. Because Ugandans have even blamed some mistakes of our energy sector mistakes to Umeme. Umeme was a messenger, downstream messenger. Umeme came in when we had paltry generation of 250 megawatts. It is going when we have over 2,000, almost 2,500. Now, was that envisaged in the agreement? Because the investment targets, the reduction of the technical losses, the commercial losses, the technologies of Yaka, prepaid and what, should have been commensurate. So Umeme came in at a time when we are the government was on the weaker side in terms of investment, upstream generation investment. Actually, by the end of Umeme contract, by the time we demanded under Chairman Dombo and the Vice John Kijaji committee, where I was a member, when we are the one who was for that agreement to be brought on time.
No wonder you were declaring
so sometimes
some conflict of interest.
We are called the rebels, but for good intention, fighting national wars. So, at that time, we again forgot the bigger picture. Actually, people were blaming Umeme for load shedding. That man was Paul, who? That shot Muzungu man. But we are happy this project has been largely managed by Ugandans, and Umeme takes credit for that. Secondly, after listing, Umeme is not even a foreign company. It's largely NSSF. It is our money. And I think it was a good investment, better than the other house I don't know how many board members have been fired from Ndorolira and who, from that NSSF house in Nakasero before you got on sale. I think this investment in energy by NSSF as a person who is interested in pension sector saving is a much better deal and cheaper cost of financing a project. So the Umeme has showed us that it is possible. When the man was Paul Moro, what was the name? When they left, Ugandans have been managers ever. So I think that technology transfer, the softwares are remaining Ugandan. So there's some unnecessary negativity. We have gone so much for small things.
All right.
People in Uganda have stolen a lot of money. For me, I want to take the debate to the bigger picture.
So you
now
think
that we are generating 2,500. By the time we understood the agreement, Bujagali had come with a very bad contract. So the cost of power, because we should have brought the cost of power down and also afford access and affordability. But with the Bujagali bad contract, again I'm talking about contract, you cannot reduce the cost of power. But now we have deemed energy. Until recently, some people have been renewing their bad agreements, make sure they loot more from government. So for me, I don't want Ugandans to be lost in this change the Auditor General is talking about, because that matter can be settled anyway.
All right.
There are bigger battles of access,
All right.
of cost, the energy mix, and by the way, the 2,500 is also very decimal. The Uganda we are talking about, of the 10-fold growth strategy, will require well over 10,000 megawatts. That debate does not attract the energy. The Umeme change is I'm calling it change.
So Umeme deserves what it's getting. That's what you're saying.
I am saying this matter should not have taken this center stage in terms of debate. This matter could have been settled. The matters I'm saying should take center stage is what is our energy mix? How do we make sure that in the next 20 years we have the energy we require, which is affordable, which can be accessed by all Ugandans? I wish we could even have put some time to know that oil and gas is also energy. Have you had any debate this level of oil and gas?
Do you think the departure of Umeme is going to reduce the tariff?
For me, I was even saying, I wish we had just made Umeme under the new owners like NSSF, attracting other Ugandan engineers as a management buyout, bringing in other stakeholders, enlisting Ugandans who can bring in, because we also have our Dangote is called we have just talked about Ham and the Kwagalana. We can get financing because this sector is more profitable.
All right.
And is a cheaper source of funding than where we are now getting money lenders, commercial funding.
But even just to add to that, you have already said NSSF is a shareholder.
Is a shareholder, yeah.
And we could have just said,
so why are we rushing?
Can you increase your shareholding?
Exactly.
But now
And take over.
we have dismantled.
Instead of putting money in concrete and mortar, give us power.
Dr. James
That's
Tweheyo.
pension funding. For me, that's where I want to take the debate. And I really want to see us going into that direction. But there are things which Umeme has just been running a government infrastructure. That has to be handed over. But it comes with human resource competence, the intellectual property, the softwares, the ecosystems, all those we are retaining. So how are we going to make sure we don't lose that momentum? We should just have said, NSF and others, diaspora remittances, bring your money here and we energize Uganda, we make it accessible, we make it affordable. That's the debate which I'm not hearing.
All right. Dr. James Tweheyo.
Let us deal with the facts. When Umeme came in, what was the situation? Now that it wants to go, what is the situation? Of course, our worry is always on transition, and that's worry always. Our worry now is also on the money. The talk of 118, the talk of 190, and the talk of the biggest figure of 234. That will give us an average difference. What was granted as a loan by Parliament of 190, and what is Umeme demanding? 234, giving an average addition of $44 million. Yes, that could be a problem, depending on whether they are in agreement or not. But as Mukitale said, the challenge is on managing the agreements. And by the way, this is not the only agreement that we're having challenges with. We need to have more. some road agreements. Sometimes they make an agreement and then subsequently you hear there are litigations and all that. So let's concentrate on whether, first of all, at the time Umeme came in, did we need it? Were we really so deserving that we needed it? The answer is very clear, yes. At the time of its transiting, when we realized that at this particular hour the costs are going high, we negotiated badly, and therefore, if we terminate, this would be the benefit. Because even the termination, by the way, has own cost-benefit analysis. When we terminate, what do we lose? When we terminate, what do we gain? When we don't terminate, what is the additional costs and losses that we're going to incur? Now, in this case, it was necessary to terminate that contract.
All right.
In this case, it is necessary to have another team that comes in to do the job. But if this other team, have we made a clear analysis that this team is not going to maintain or do better? And how are we ready to supervise? That's the greatest question that you put at the end.
All right.
What is your take on this matter? And the government, as the government moves to nationalize power generation and distribution. So we should be ready to hold government accountable.
All right.
Not only government, but also the new UEDCL that is coming in. I'm calling it the new, which comes in. We need to be
the old new.
The old new. We need to be able to maintain the momentum. We need to be able to maintain the supply. We need to be able to maintain the management and make sure that we, the citizens, who have little or nothing to do with these other agreements for us, our interest is to say, okay, is power on today? Yes. Power has gone. What is the problem? You don't even know who to call. Some of us, they want to our and see. So our interest is to ensure that whether it is Umeme, whether it is Mukitale, whether we need the service. And that's where our attention should be.
And at a cheap cost.
All right.
And at a cost that is manageable and affordable. It may not be cheap, depending on who, but at least the service should be sustainable.
All right.
And the government should be ready to provide that.
All right, let's go for a break now. When we return, we will hear from Marion Chirabo, who has not yet had a say on the issue of Umeme, and then we'll see if with time is still on our side, we'll shift our gears and look at the political side of this week. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90 continues after this. Thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, reviewing the major events of the week. We are looking at the Umeme buyout, situation where Umeme is saying it needs $234 million. The government of Uganda is insisting that it will only pay what the Auditor General indicated, $118 million. But remember, we borrowed from Stanbic Bank 190 million Uganda shillings. That's what Parliament approved. How do we handle this situation? But the biggest question also is, will we be able to have a better service from the government when the government actually takes over? I want to bring in Marion. Your quick insights about this issue of Umeme buyout. What you read in it as a Ugandan?
Well, as a Ugandan, for me, the first thing that when it comes to monies and appropriation of monies, I think we do not have the best track record. We also the parliamentary exhibition, but also the amounts of money that go in unclassified budgets, the amounts of money that I said later that go in people's wardrobes and cars. So already I'm worried, but also what increases my worry is the fact that we don't seem to want to discuss it. We are out of time. And we had agreed on this panel that this thing has been 7 years in the making, 7 years. So by now we should have dotted all the I's, and we should have had a full understanding of why we're kicking out Umeme. We don't seem to know why we are. There seems to be a debate on whether or not they actually improved the energy sector in Uganda, or they have been cheating Ugandans. We only have the reports of what the president said, and he claimed that it was a very bad deal. And I've also seen reports of some of the clauses in the agreement saying that, Umeme had us at a chokehold, because any termination meant that we were going to compensate them over 105% of the investment that they had made. So we seem to be in this kind of darkness that is, but electricity has become such an important concept Some people will even claim that it's a basic need almost, because it runs our businesses, it runs
It's
our
not
homes.
a claim, it's a fact.
Yeah, so it runs our businesses.
Just go back
it
to
runs
your
our
house
homes.
and find there's no electricity.
There's no electricity.
Mm.
Like life comes at a standstill almost. So we can't live without it. But also the access to it is also important. So we are dealing with this thing that is so valuable to people's lives, but it's shrouded in mystery. So for me, that's my first red flag. How I had wished that we had perhaps a speaker who was more interested in these issues and the plight of Ugandans, that they push so hard to make sure that we look into this report. And so that when this taxpayers, because it's taxpayers' money, it's coming out of our pockets, the Stanbic loan is going to be paid through taxpayers' money. So we have a right to understand this agreement and understand why this company is going out, is going to be replaced by this one. Does that mean that we are still going to have the normal access we've been having to electricity? Does that mean that it's a lower or higher cost? We need to know what we're getting ourselves into. So I think it's very unfortunate that they are leaving, but we still don't understand what's going on as ordinary Ugandans. But we can only pray that one day, one time, things will change.
What do you mean one day, one time?
One day.
Changes
because
now.
it is a constant thing.
There's a change. You are moving away from Umeme back to the government, which has a social contract with you to deliver services.
When I talk about change, I'm talking about the social contract really that the people have with the government, because ideally it's the government supposed to protect the interests, but we all cannot trust the government. At least the track record has shown that we cannot trust them to best protect our interests, because now we're asking, it was a bad deal, but these were ministers from government and went and made the bad deal in Washington. So who are we going to blame?
We've always been told that Umeme is a South African company. How come the deal was actually made in Washington? Honorable Mkitali.
I have made 3 points in terms of the bigger picture. That at the time this agreement came in, government was at a weaker point in terms of negotiation. Now that we have invested more upstream in terms of generation, we have invested more midstream in terms of transmission. By the way, even by the time we finished Bujagali, we didn't have a transmission line from Bujagali to Kawani. So we should learn what's called simultaneous investment. So where now we should put focus is the distribution. But I've said, as we plan ahead for more generation for future, and that's why I would have expected a seamless confidence in NSSF and others to have an alternative scenario, of financing. Because what I resent is people who put us hostages by blackmail.
So you
behave like a coffin seller.
So you're of the
because
view,
somebody panic mode, somebody is dead. So when you run from the mortuary to Kakande's place, the coffin seller is a size of kulaba. For you still have tears, you have lost your grandmother, because my grandmother died long ago, so I have no problem.
they start showing you the variety of
so
coffins.
to most class. So there are guys, as Ugandans are mourning, who are really running very fast, making commission. That's Stanbic money. This money we knew. If you inform the NSSF, my Kwagalana group, my Ugandan diaspora, that we are looking for the change. I'm calling it change because I know how much we spend in this budget. $118 million. The last 4 years before the... Why this week? When we know that it's ending and everything has come in 2 weeks.
No, but also the other interesting part is government is going to borrow from Stanbic at a very good percentage to pay Ugandans who are shareholders, including NSSF, who by virtue of having this money, Umeme, don't need it as of now.
Exactly.
So they receive it on Wednesday. Thursday, the government will issue a bond. It has already issued one of 40 trillion.
Yes.
Now these same guys are going to move this money into a government bond. A government bond of 20 years is close to 19%. So exactly, you have shifted the cost of return to these same guys who are receiving a return of 19% under Umeme. Now they are going to receive a return of 19 under a government bond. Who is
So
fooling
he has actually brought out the point I was
who is making a kill, Dr. Mumza?
I mean, it's just foolishness.
No, I was talking of
the
the
way.
I was talking of the callousness.
economic policy.
The
We call it-
callousness. I want to call them coffin makers. I don't want to use the word mafia.
We call it
Coffin sellers. Because why am I saying this? Alternative financing would have been got.
All right.
Mobilized from our savings, mobilized from our private sector, moreover investing in-house so that we don't externalize this money, because basically this money is going to go out of the country because we've not been intentional to do the boo-boo we talk about to create the capacity of our pension sector. And by the way, sometimes I say being a bank manager in Uganda and pension fund manager is the cheapest thing to do.
Yeah,
You
but
just sell instruments to government, you know you make your
But
money.
now
But
the
do you
European also
think?
invented
But do you
it.
think NSSF lacks the capacity to meet this, even if it is $240
It should have been
billion?
put on the table. You just do
not.
listing.
It has the capacity.
It has the
ability.
it has the
to-
money.
But even as you say, the Kwagarana group, they are all out there. The real estate now is not giving them this.
Their money is in concrete here.
The fellows
There's
would have
no-
loved
even
it to
go
come in.
here on the third floor. There is nobody. The place is empty.
So there were many options we could have taken. Anyway, the Clinton team more than 25 years ago, almost, called it
So for me,
economic
now
stability.
the point I want to end with is rationalization. The DISCA 118, and I'm still calling it change, has over eclipsed the bigger debate. We have rationalized the many cost centers and the empires. Somebody is sitting somewhere in Kamocha, another one is these many empires. I don't know generation, I don't know regulator, I don't know transmission. These cost centers have gone.
All right.
What I would want to see, now that we have gone back to command and control, as it was in the days I worked with UEB, I worked as a service provider in terms of procurement for UEB, we would want to see how best
All right.
can we make sure we generate more from one command center, we transmit simultaneously and distribute this power, including discussing the energy mix
All right.
and the energy we need 2040 plus.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Mkitale.
Otherwise we become a
We have
South
so
Africa.
many comments coming in. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. But I'll read one particular comment. Somebody writes in and says, and is Henry listening in from Bada. He says, "Thank you for gathering all those brilliant minds in one studio. The proposal by Honorable Mkitale on the management buyout of Umeme is excellent. I wonder why government does not see Dr. Mhumuza, Honorable Mkitale, and all you guys in studio as presidential advisors. Unfortunately, positions of our presidential advisors in Uganda are political rewards and not based on competence." Well,
But I am by appointment.
we should become
Part of my
presidential
work as a
advisors
board member.
according to this particular.
When the session ends, we shall discuss that.
Listen. Now, gentlemen, we may not have a lot of time to actually jump into our next topic, but it will be a shame if we left this studio without paying tribute to Shaka Sali, a leading African broadcaster who passed on yesterday. And I want to begin with you, Dr. James Tweheyo. Shaka Sali, the kid from Kabale.
From Mparo.
Chigezi.
Shaka Sali was a star. He rose by himself, by the way. You know, this is what they call self-propelling individuals. And raised to that level and became a shining star for us in Uganda and for Africa in general. We have certainly lost an icon. I feel so bad. He was a model to so many other young people, especially those who wanted to be journalists, who were doing mass comm and journalism and all that. And really, as a country, we have lost a man. May his soul rest in peace.
What do you remember about him? What do you think is the contribution he has made, looking at the work he was doing at VOA?
In all cases, whenever he would bring these Africans there and they'd run that program, you know, there is now a Michigan man from, I think, Kanungu, who has been imitating him. So that African program, which was running and bringing out people to explain it.
Straight Talk Africa.
Straight Talk Africa. I don't know whether it will come and remain, whether it is going with him.
Well, VOA has been scrapped by the Trump administration.
The good things
By
people
Dodge.
do, follow them to their grave. And we shall certainly miss him.
Let's hear from you, Dr. Muhumuza, Shaka Sali. a man who likes to dress like you.
Or be like him.
The fashion.
He was headed to 72, and this real has been my mathematical argument. Why don't we round off
You always said,
people's
be better,
years?
not bitter.
Yeah.
Round off people's years. Now they are telling us he was just 2 weeks away from his 72 years. Shouldn't we say he died at 72? Why are we taking him back? The year has 52 weeks. He had done the 50 weeks. That man died at 72. But for that is he made his mark, and of course his voice, his appearance. He was a brand. He became a brand. You relate him with VOA, but I always tell people, which TV was Oprah? There are people who are institutions.
Oprah Winfrey.
People who stand. And I think we need to be looking at that to say, how do you stand out and say he was an RDC? But the personality of the RDC stands out more, that people are coming to your office, not because it is the RDC's office, but they are coming to see Tueheyo because they know Tueheyo is going to solve problems for us. So I think that is one challenge he has left to us. Many people will forget Mandela was president of South Africa, because Mandela's town is bigger than the president of South Africa. Now for me, these are the fellows and these are the imitations I would want to really recognize on these guys and remember them for what they did as persons, who they are and who they were. And I think that legacy is go on, rest in peace, our beautiful voice across the seas.
How do you build that brand? Probably you can advise me.
Of course, brands takes time. I tell people, KFC is not chicken. It's KFC.
It's a brand.
It's going to take you time, but also delivering that quality. I don't fly planes. I fly Emirates. If I can, I fly KLM. These are brands. So brands will take time, and you have to be very consistent. And you're also not doing it that people should call you who you are. But because you are solving people's problems, they begin to see that solution. Now, those days when we were growing up, here somebody has gone to Mulago. That's Mulago you have gone to. But now you hear people are going to alternative places. But still Mulago stands out. I have told people it is rare to find an ambulance leaving Mulago for these other hospitals. Instead you find hospital ambulances leaving these other places, no names attached.
Actually, these days it's common. They'll tell you go and find a CT scan in Zambia.
Yes,
the ambulance will take you from Mulago to Zambia.
But you are going back to Mulago after the scan.
Go to Platinum Hospital.
You are going back to Mulago after the scan. And these are things to cure. And you connect them to the challenges that you this year may face, because Mulago remains a public institution. You may have protocol. You want the scan. It may take 2 years to procure. Even when it's procured, the slides are not there to print out your picture, whereas the other private sector does them very well. And these are our concerns as this year takes over. Will it be allowed to go and collect revenue from government agencies? Because that has been Umeme's nightmare. Umeme, I think, has a bill that government has not paid, over 82 billion or thereabout.
Maybe that's why they're chasing it.
These are the things that say when you build a brand.
Some of the biggest defaulters are the armed forces.
When you build a brand, you want to have that space that you, even when you stand tall, you've been given that space to speak out and have your brand. And I think credit to VOA, they allowed this man also to build his brand and has stood with them.
Marion, anything you know about Shaka Sir?
Of course.
All right.
Come on. I think my earliest memories of him is as a young girl watching him when WBS used to show it, segments of it. Yes. So at that time I was not really interested in let me say anything politics and news but I found it so peculiar that there was this guy on Voice of America who had a program about Africa, and he had, most of the times he would have African hosts,
guests.
So African guests there. So I found it so interesting that here is supposed to be an American program, but for some reason it has African politicians coming and speaking their minds. So I think the things when I think about his life is in an era, because that was before social media, that was before the world was, this global
so many
village
TV channels,
So I think in a space that, at least in his space, where there was so much Western narratives shaping the world, he created this small space where there can be African voices talking about African politics as opposed to a Western lens. And I think I commend him for fighting for that space for African people, and to be able to come on and speak on their experiences and what is actually going on in their country and at that time, at that particular time. So I think he has left a wonderful legacy. And really we appreciate him for the work that he has done in building the African narrative.
Well, you remind me some comments that I read on social media on X, particularly. There were many young people who were saying, I hated that man, not in a bad way,
Yeah.
because it's the only time I was not allowed to watch
Yes,
cartoons.
yeah.
Come on. So you are in that category. You are in that category, Marion. Let's hear from you, Honorable Stephen Mukitali.
Shaka Sali was a global citizen. Space Talk Africa on VOA was really a program which was very popular. And you know, he hosted the whole of Africa. So Africa Mons, Disi Munyachigezi, Uganda Mons. And I was talking one time to one of my son, Peter Moses in Boston. Said, you see, the examples of Shaka Sali should inspire you. Don't just, well, there. You can report from Boston, you know, in Africa, and I was giving Shaka Sali as a
he has been reporting.
and
We have seen
yes,
we have seen him reporting.
And when we were here, I was reminded, even this radio here before I went to Parliament 2005, the person who was hosting me before I went to Parliament, he went to BBC. Jakana. So it's also inspiring to media houses and to journalists that it is possible, our own children, to make it at that big international level. But also, the other story I had when I was doing my early work in that area of Chigezi, most Ugandans who went out of insecurity, crisis, have gone out there and excelled, and they have done more studies and have become professionals, because I think it had to do with the change of government at one time when he went, and I think he had earlier wanted to serve some military or something like that.
Yeah, he had joined the army during
That's the story I
time.
got from Kampala itself as a young man when we were dealing with post-genocide Rwanda challenges. So you can see, even some of the money we get in Uganda here, by the way, including Rwanda, a lot of diaspora have gone back. They went because of conflict. But when they go back, they are very useful. They take back technology. They become investors. And I want to say, we Ugandans in diaspora there, we love you, but we want you to come back when you are investors. Bring us technology. Come and create jobs back at home.
They have been complaining.
Make it conducive for them to come. Zelensky was saying, I'll be happy for my children to walk the streets.
For
Can
instance,
you put the streets that are
for
water
instance,
free?
they have been complaining that you are not allowing them to vote. They say they bring a lot of money here.
But I hear so many journalists are running. I don't know why. Are you looking for green apples?
What do you mean running?
You must be knowing from your circles and platforms what is happening.
Running athletics or what? I don't get it.
Political office. Is that
Running for political office? What exactly?
And for me, I would want us to take people there deliberately. The Filipinos take technicians, plumbers, deliberate. So I would have no problem if we take more nurses, more teachers, intentional, the skilling project now. We should have contracts, bilateral contracts with these countries. We don't want people to go as kadamas and house cleaners. You go there as a medic. You come back and give us a good medical center. You go as a plumber, go as somebody who is doing some carpentry joinery. When you come back, you become another local kind equivalent of furniture. And for me, there is everything good. Even those, you go to northern Uganda, people who went from West Nile, who went from Acholi, out of a crisis, are coming with PhDs. When Uganda asks, who owns this? This man is a PhD. He's working well. One time in London, I found an Alur guy, and an in-law in Ulisa, a senior transport planner in London. And somehow we didn't take them by plan. They went out of press.
Unfortunately, the planned kids are the ones who are taken there to study at the cost of the Ugandan money, our own money, I should say.
And they get
and
wasted.
those who should have gone there are actually not the ones going there, unfortunately. And therefore, we must look at the possibility of changing this trend. Yes.
All right.
Hustlers are doing very well, by the way.
Very quickly.
More than those ones we say, I pick my only $10,000, I take my son out. Some of them are even getting problems, let alone what Trump has. One area I like Trump of saying there is only two sexes, there is a male and a female.
Dr. Fred Mumza, the diaspora and the contribution they make to our country, using the example of Shaka Sali, it is a strong belief there we're not doing enough to facilitate them. You are talking about creating the environment. What kind of environment would they need to actually make that contribution so that we can grow our country and our economy generally?
I think for me, I'm even looking at growing that diaspora base, especially now that the dollars, which are institutionally based, have reduced. What do we mean by institutionally based? Somebody sits in American Congress and says, let's give Uganda $200 million. Now that you do nothing, you receive it. But now we have to go the market route.
Yes.
We must go and fight for dollars on the international market. Your coffee is limited. Your cotton and I don't know what, all sorts of things. So you've got to look at the human beings as well and make it a deliberate effort to say, how do I grow my diaspora base? And I've been telling people, economists make a provision. You can say your GDP. Your GDP is what has been developed within the Ugandan borders. Now, as we have said, part of this belongs to South Africans, MTN, belongs to Indians,
the
these banks,
multinationals,
the multinationals.
the money makers.
Now, how do I also, rather than struggling to build the infrastructure to grow my economy, can I begin to build a part of Ugandan economy in these places where the infrastructure already exists? So we shift to gross national income. That are also going to pick what Ugandans have made in Germany, it belongs to Uganda. What Ugandans have made in Boston, what Ugandans have made in Dubai, you already are looking at about 1.4 trillion or billion dollars that is coming here out of those. I want to grow that diaspora base. Now, to grow that, we are saying one of the things, teach those going to the Middle East Arabic. It's a language. Teach German, teach French, but also professionalize them and organize them. So I'm looking at a deliberate effort, not just to say those out there should have more rights. And that's why it will also come in. Open for them windows to vote, so that they still feel Ugandan, that I can determine even the LOC one at my area. Who knows, some of them will even pay this local service tax and say, guys, after all, it is my grandmother in the village who is going to benefit from that road. But as it goes back to Honorable Mkitari's point, I don't want to send my tax of $10,000 and somebody sitting somewhere in Kampala is determining. But if I have a strong local government, which I can hold accountable, and I voted for that LOC from Boston where I stay, I would gladly send that man. I think it was the chairman, former chairman for Rwengo, who had convinced people, who had convinced these guys to say, can you buy a cow for your people in the village? And they trusted him. I mean, these are the things you want to build. The bulk of the people fighting for Israel are not Jews on the ground in the Middle East. But they know what it means for them. So it's a whole conversation we need to bring up, especially as part of the tenfold growth. This is a paper I would want to present at NPA, and we see how do we take it to the next level. But as somebody has said, can we give advice, and the advice is taken. If it's ready to be taken, I'm ready to burn my midnight candle and do the 5 pages. But even then, I will do it anyway.
All right, we must bring this.
So the point,
quickly in 1 minute.
And I want to tie in this point, the role of diaspora. When we are admiring Ethiopia for having local banks, that money has been remitted by the diaspora. When we hear the success stories of the housing estates in Rwanda, because sometimes the relatives, friends, and in-laws have problems in executing projects. But when you have a project, an investment club doing some, high-end accommodation areas, you can convince a diaspora person and say, yes, you are getting these rooms of this standard, and somebody will put his hard-earned money in winter and send it home. The earlier point I made is that it is possible to avoid losing the momentum. NSSF working with the government supervisors to actually even do better if we listed the new distribution role, the downstream distribution, so that the diaspora and other Ugandans can invest in it, and we do it seamless, and you would actually see the target which both the manifesto and the vision is talking about. We would want at least 75% of citizens to access power. Currently, we are struggling to reach 50. We wanted to do a free connection. It has not taken off. So these are areas we need to think big instead of just discussing the 118. Which would, that listing would raise in less than 6 months that $118 million.
Or if we have to bring this discussion to an end, and I want to end with a quote from the late Shaka Sali. Time is not our best ally, but let's keep the African hope alive. With that, we come to the end of Spectrum Extra. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for tuning in and contributing to this discussion. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for making time to be with us here. From me and the team here in studio, we wish you a fabulous weekend.